The crimes of Jeffrey Dahmer made the world cringe. 17 murders. Cannibalism. Sex with the dead. A man who made his Milwaukee apartment into a violent and erotic death chamber.
One thing led to another. It took more and more deviant type behaviors to satisfy my urges.
Dahmer even tried to create living sex zombies by injecting acid into their brains. Jeffrey Dahmer, it seemed, was as close to raw evil as the world had ever known.
Jeffrey thought he was the devil. Jeffrey thought he was so evil that he was equal to the devil.
The first child of Joyce and Lionel Dahmer was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on May 21st, 1960, just before their first anniversary. His name was Jeffrey.
It was a very happy time when Jeff was first born, and for a couple of months it was like everything was brand new and very, very enjoyable and happy, looking forward to the future.
While Jeff's father pursued his chemistry degree, Jeff grew into a bright and loving child.
He was very exuberant. He liked to wrestle. He liked to run around and ham it up for the camera. And he liked to play with kids. He liked to get together with them. And he was very outgoing.
Jeff was also an extremely curious child.
He seemed to want to play with things and feel things and get to know their texture, and he seemed to be very much in tune with what's around him. He just wanted to know what was going on.
He had a fascination with animals as a youngster. Once, 4-year-old Jeff watched his father collect the bones of small animals that had died under the house.
I brought him out, put him in a metal pail just to collect them all in one place, and they dropped in with sort of a clanking noise, and Jeff seemed kind of interested in that noise, and he took a hold and let them drop down in too. You know, in retrospect, everything looks grim and dark and sinister. You know, like, could that be the start of something evil? Well, I have to admit, it's simply just the curiosity of a child.
Lionel finished his schooling with a PhD in chemistry. The family moved to Ohio, relocating 3 times before settling down on a nearly 2-acre wooded lot in the town of Bath, an hour's drive south of Cleveland. It was then that Lionel began to notice the previously gregarious Jeff had become shy and withdrawn.
He did seem to be awkward socially and just didn't feel comfortable.
To take his mind off the move, 7-year-old Jeff was given a dog, Frisky, whom he loved dearly.
With people that he knew or his new pet, the next-door neighbor boy, he was very relaxed. But there was this shyness and feeling of inferiority that we were concerned about at that time.
What the Dahmers thought their son needed was to feel more involved, so they let Jeff choose the name of their second son. Jeff named his brother David. Lionel also encouraged his son to participate in activities that would include contact with other kids.
What we were trying to do was to involve Jeff with activities with the thought that involvement would lead to human involvement, a forced, almost, interaction.
And on the weekends, father and son planted gardens and raised sheep for competition in 4-H fairs. To commemorate their gardening days, young Jeff gave his father a handmade card with a poem.
There's a picture of me eating an ear of corn on the front, and Jeff says, "The squash and the pumpkins can never compare to the kind of dad who has curly hair." And it says, "This poem is from Jeff, and I love you to death."
When Jeff was 10, his mother was hospitalized and treated for anxiety. From there, his parents' marriage began to fail. Jeff's fascination with nature and small animals continued into his teenage years, when he became curious about what they looked like on the inside. For specimens, he collected roadkill. Riding around the country roads in Bath, carrying garbage bags, Jeff searched for carcasses. Jeff brought the roadkill he found into the backyard of the house, and there in the secrecy of the woods, he dissected the animals.
I really have become convinced that that was sort of the starting point in this downward spiral of his. And it was associated with his puberty. And when you have hormones kicking into this terrible mixture, what he's doing, he's investigating insides of animals. And his sexuality was developing at the same time.
Teenage Jeff was discovering that he felt sexually attracted only to men. But the thoughts of sex with men became interlocked with fantasies of killing another man and dismemberment. The fantasies excited him, but they were unspeakable.
I think it was around age 14 or 15. Started having obsessive thoughts of violence intermingled with sex. And it just got worse and worse. I didn't know how to tell anyone about it, so I didn't. I just kept it all inside.
The fantasies included lying next to an unconscious man. For the first time, Jeff's fantasies crossed the line from his mind into action. He devised a plan. He would knock out a local jogger with a bat and lie next to him. On the day he opted to wait for his victim, the jogger didn't run by. He never attempted the clubbing a second time. As he entered high school, his sexual fantasies traumatized him. To escape, he began drinking. On the way to classes in the morning, he would fill up a cup with hard liquor at a friend's house.
And I remember sitting next to him in a first period, I believe, history class, and he had a styrofoam cup of scotch, I believe it was scotch. I remember saying, "Jeff, what is that?" And he threw his head back and he shook it and he said, "It's my medicine." But clearly he was getting drunk at 8 o'clock in the morning.
At home, Jeff was watching his parents' marriage dissolve. When their bickering escalated to open fighting, he retreated to the forested backyard, slapping tree trunks with sticks.
I'd leave the house, go out in the woods and sulk, brooding, wondering why they had to have such a rough relationship.
He remained aloof with few interests and no close friendships, but he still seemed to have a sense of humor. On the high school tennis team, Jeff spent most of his time goofing around rather than playing a serious game. But more often than not, the jokes were at Jeff's expense. He gained a reputation as the class clown. Acting out in a bizarre or unexpected manner became known at his school as, quote, doing a Dahmer.
All of a sudden you'd be walking down the hall and you'd hear someone yelling and hollering and running through the hallway, and it's Jeff Dahmer in the middle of the day, running, flapping his arms, yelling, hurricane drill, everybody hide.
At one point, Jeff collected money from classmates in exchange for a show at the mall.
And a woman is handing out samples of sunflower seeds, and Jeff is taking one and then another and being very polite, like he always was, and then just spits them out all over the place and starts yelling at the top of his lungs, "I'm allergic, I'm allergic, I'm allergic," and runs away.
During his junior year, Jeff went along on a school-sponsored trip to Washington, D.C.
And Jeff said, "I have an idea, let's go see the vice president." And we sort of all laughed and said, "Yes, sure, the vice president."
Jeff went to a payphone. When he returned, he announced that they would be seen in the office of Vice President Walter Mondale in 2 hours.
He had explained that we were high school students from Ohio working on our school newspaper, and we were in town for a week, and could we come and talk to someone in the vice president's office?
His slick talking worked. Dahmer had gotten his classmates inside the executive office building to meet with Mondale. In the classroom, Jeff was something of a model student.
Very polite to adults, dressed very nice, very respectful to teachers. Did his work. He could be an A student if he wanted to. Other times he would fail a class because he had no interest. He could be very polite with very good manners, yes sir, no sir, when he spoke with teachers.
He was perfecting his ability to fool authority figures. But as time went on, Jeff became less interested in his performance at school.
No one really knew what was going on in his mind. He didn't open up to anybody. He didn't have any close friends. And he had really slipped away from his social life the older we got in high school.
At the school near Bath, Ohio, Jeffrey remained an alcoholic outcast. His behavior was the subject of mockery from other students.
I don't think he connected, he didn't engage with people. So if you don't engage with people, then you give and take of conversation and feelings, then you end up internalizing a lot. You fantasize a lot. And then the next step is to think that